Okay, I'm going to let people in.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
What a nice group. Okay, so ready to start? I think if we can get everybody to mute themselves who are participating. And I will get started.
Hi.
One second. Okay, perfect. Okay, hi, welcome everybody. It's wonderful to see some of your faces. All the faces we can see, it's wonderful to see you. And those who are joining us via YouTube live, we're happy that you've decided to join us as well. Tonight is a really special treat because I'm in conversation with Dr. Francine Lederer. Some of you have seen her videos. She's been so generous with her time speaking about the stress, how to cope with the stress of the coronavirus, speaking about the coronavirus as a test. And for those of you who are interested in the way to, just waving hi, mentally cope with the various challenges that this virus presents, I suggest that you go back to our YouTube page, youtube.com/Sinai Temple Presents, to take a look at some of her videos. I have found them to be soothing and comforting and extremely helpful over the last 6-7 weeks. So I want to just introduce Dr. Lederer. Dr. Francine Lederer is a clinical psychologist and life transition specialist. She's been in private practice, LA Talk Therapy, for 15 years. She specializes in working with couples, pregnant women, and new parents. She's a certified John Gottman Bringing Baby Home educator, helping couples to reconnect after the birth of a baby. She's also trained in Sue Johnson's emotional focused therapy, as well as Harville Hendrix Imago therapy for couples. She also runs a few virtual groups, a grief support group, expectant mom support group, and it's hard to believe, but now a COVID-19 support group. So welcome to Dr. Lederer. Hopefully all of you can virtually welcome her, although she is very much part of our Sinai Temple and Sinai Akiba Academy community, a mom in the community and a good friend. So thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Guzik. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. It's an important one.
I think so too. And we've had just a wonderful time connecting over the last 6-7 weeks. And I feel like every time I talk to Dr. Lederer, it's like personal therapy for myself. So I thank you for that. But what you and I have had a chance to do is really name a lot of the blessings involved, kind of the intrinsic blessings involved in staying at home. And you and I have talked about, someone's already chatting here. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. So you and I have talked about the fact that staying at home, if we are with a partner or with children or a roommate, whichever that may be, it means having the chance to share a lot of moments together. Sharing moments might mean sharing in each other's hobbies, sharing in each other's schedules, learning more about that person that maybe you ever did before, even if you've been married for 10, 20, 30 years, really getting to know that person. I was thinking taking walks together, and I think primarily spending almost every meal together.
Absolutely. and you know what's interesting, because I feel like it's sort of like a hybrid of emotions. Like on one hand, there are a bunch of people that are saying, oh, how nice, there's less pressure from the outside world. There are less demands, right, from the outside world, from having to go, having to do, having to be. And then you hear on the, from a whole other group of people that are certainly having wonderful moments with their families, but also acknowledging and sharing a lot about, I keep hearing the word intense. It's so intense at home, right? And so I think that presents a real challenge, right? When we're not used to seeing our partners or our spouses all the time. We're not used to seeing our kids all the time, right? We're in the house all the time. So there is an intensity to it that I think just feels, overwhelming.
And I loved how you painted that picture, because I also feel like so many of us go to bed and we wake up with the unknown of what's happening in the world. And at the same time, we also wake up with the unknown of the kind of emotions of our family members. Are we waking up to a kid that had a good night's sleep, or a kid that had a nightmare, or a child that's not really sure how to face what's going on outside? And so often, instead of waking up to the normal schedule of eat breakfast, brush teeth, go to school, knowing exactly what the day will look like, we're waking up to potentially a very intense moment and not knowing until our eyes open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's almost like I keep saying it's the certainty of the uncertain, right? We are certain that there is uncertainty, right? And if we are continue to remind ourselves that and each other, maybe it makes it a little bit easier.
So I wanted to jump into one of the questions that you and I discussed, and we spoke a lot about roles, how some of us are used to going to the office and having a particular role, or when we're at home, we wear the hat of, parent, of, mom or dad, or even when we're home and we're single, we wear the hat of roommate with another roommate. But all of a sudden, we're home and we are the professional, we're the parent, sometimes we're the spiritual leader, sometimes we're the disciplinarian, and sometimes lately we're the best friend, right? For a lot of our kids, who aren't socializing with anyone else, we're suddenly the best friend as well. And so I'm just curious how we approach this. How do we manage these various roles at home and kind of hold on to ourselves when everyone else at home is also viewing us in a different way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, first of all, we need to be, like you said earlier, aware that we all play varied roles in our lives, right? I mean, we did before this COVID-19 pandemic, and now even more so. So a common example that I think a lot of you probably are familiar with or have experienced is, let's say you find yourself doing some work. Maybe you're sitting at your office at home, or your kitchen table, or wherever you're sitting, and you're just zoning into your work hat. And then all of a sudden, a minute later, your child comes toward you and says, "I'm hungry, I need to eat, feed me." And then maybe 30 seconds after that, your spouse or your partner comes in and starts complaining about a conversation they had with someone. And maybe your phone is ringing, and all of a sudden somebody needs your attention. So within a span of 2 minutes, you have been asked to now put on your mommy hat, your chef hat, your being loving wife hat, your good friend hat, and
your
all these
homeschooling hat, all of
yes,
it.
exactly. And so that's a lot. And I think it's happening so much so that people aren't even realizing that it's happening. So I think that's the important piece, is understanding that we all play varied roles and trying to make a distinction between what I'm doing when I'm doing it, right? So knowing that, let's say, if your child comes to you at 11 a.m., but they have to be, and wants to play, let's say, ball with you, or wants to engage in a board game activity, but they're supposed to be doing, a school assignment, and you're supposed to hop on a work call. So that's probably not the best time to do that, right? So being able to reframe and let everybody aware in the home of what role are we in now, right? What is everybody's role right now?
So how, like, can you play that out? What does that conversation look like with your like a 6-year-old?
Yeah.
Because I have a 6-year-old.
Yeah, so maybe that means
Begging for food and you're like, I have to take the work call. How does that conversation play out?
yeah. So I mean, I think that plays out by, okay, let's go grab, honey, let's grab something, a snack that you can eat right now. In 2 minutes, I'm going to be getting on a call. I'm going to be in my quiet space, the quiet space that I use where I do all my work. I'm going to be in that space, okay, for the next 30 minutes or for a while. As long as you keep seeing me at that desk, that means I'm working. Okay, so if you see me and I'm, at my desk and I'm doing work, that means that's the quiet time, right? And I have to get that work done so then I can finish it up as soon as possible, so then I can start preparing lunch for you or to be there when school is over so I can help you with your school assignment, right?
So I love that. But what I'm curious about, this is something else you and I kind of spoke about, that managing of space. So is it essential to, create the quiet space? But what if you're in a, home situation where something like that is impossible, where the quiet space that I'm imagining is also where we have dinner, or maybe that's also where, I don't know, someone does homework, or how do you manage the space in your home right now when we're always home? That, and also the emotional space. We're treading into each other's territory, and it's really hard to say, I can't be with you right now. Can you walk away, when there's nowhere to walk away?
Yeah.
Or there's no office to go to.
Yeah.
So I know that was a lot but how about managing physical space and then managing emotional space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, that's a real thing, right? And yeah, I mean, I think first of all, part of this is creating boundaries, right? And understanding what those boundaries are. Now, again, a 6-year-old isn't going to understand that. I'm not even sure if your partner will understand that, right? Like, I think that everybody's coming from a different angle. And so a different meaning of what it means to be home and what it means to be together. So I think for as far as physical space, yeah, that's true. Not everyone is going to have their own, office desk or workspace area. And so I think part of it is the transitions in the time of day. We need to use the time of day to help us understand, who we are when, what we're doing when. So if we're all let's say a whole family is gathered at the kitchen table doing work, right? Let's say everybody's on an iPad or a sheet assignment or something and doing work. Okay, so now we're doing work, but when that time changes and it's lunchtime, right? Or we start preparing lunch, maybe we're going to transition that space into an eating area, right? And so I think trying to carve out however best you can in your own space, in area, even if it's like a little chair, if it's a little corner, if it's somewhere, on your bed or like next in the hallway, wherever that is, where you can feel like, you know what, I'm going to go there later on. And that's just going to be where let's say, have my toys, right? Or a special toy that I like, or that's when I can no one can bother me. Right. So kind of, and again, I know it's hard. This is not easy, but I think if we can help each other become aware that it's important, or somehow understand that we all need space, right? If we're from an emotional standpoint too, right? If we're seeing each other and we keep getting into the same arguments, or the tension is just there over and over again, it keeps repeating itself. It's like, well, we need a break. You know what? Maybe I'm going to go take a shower and you're going to read this book, and, this way, or I'm going to talk to a friend and you're going to, cook some dinner, whatever it is, right? So it's kind of having also that space where you can separate, I think, is really, really important.
And what I think is also really important about kind of the manner in which you're explaining this, it seems like a lot of kind of naming the emotion. And being aware of how you're feeling and being willing to say it out loud. I love that you're certified in John Gottman. And I just think a lot about kind of giving people the silent treatment and kind of stonewalling a relationship right now, and how easy it is to fall in the silent treatment in this kind of situation. Because I could imagine if we can't find the physical space, then maybe putting up kind of a mental wall or a mental block is the way that we deal with someone we just don't want to deal with. So how do we move away from that? Like, how do you move away from giving someone the silent treatment, especially if it's just two of you and kids as well? You know, how do you move away from kind of ignoring your kids, using that as your technique, instead of what you're suggesting, kind of naming and communicating? How do you transition from one to the other? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I think right now, more than anything, this is a time where, we need to instill, that where patience, kindness, empathy goes a long way. Right. And I feel like those things need to be sort of in the forefront of our minds more so than ever before, because, I think one of the things we've uncovered in these last 7 weeks or so is that, everyone's grieving in some way. Right. Everyone is a little bit, everyone's on edge, a little bit more anxious, a little bit more worried, a little bit more restless. Right. And so I feel like it's important to just acknowledge that piece, that things feel a little bit off in general. Right. If we know that, then when we go into a situation, right, like if you know that your partner is upset or potentially going to be upset, you're going to be sensitive to them, when you initiate a conversation. Right. And obviously it's hard to do that every second of the day. Right. But we need to create that awareness, right, about how we also find time. And it's not just about communicating, but it's also when do we choose to communicate. Right. So a lot of couples get into arguments really at the wrong times, and they go at it. Right. Either they stonewall and ignore each other, or they explode at each other. Neither of those things are helpful or healthy. Right. So kind of understanding, like, when is the right time to talk about something? When is it a good time to not talk? And when is it a good time to talk? Right. And when do you set that almost like a schedule, or when do you set that expectation to initiate that conversation that needs to be had? Right. It might just be also checking in. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to do in general, that should be on our radar. We need to check in with each other more regularly, whether it's our spouse, our partner, our children. Right. And when I say check in, I don't mean you have to like run around them every minute of the day. How are you? How are you feeling? Right. Like that's going to also feel overwhelming. But maybe finding those moments in the week, right, to kind of say, do you have some time? How have things been going this week?
And do you find, like, this advice you're giving, do you feel like it's pretty universal? Like, do you suggest like 3 check-ins a week with each family member? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be, it's going to be varied. I mean, I think the concept is universal, but how often you do it and the approach will be varied, because some people are just not talkers, or for some people it's really, really hard. And so I feel like any momentum they have, or any opportunity, even if it's once a week or however that works, I think it's something, and something is better than nothing.
I totally agree. And I'm just thinking, like, as you say, we need to check in with each other. I'm also cognizant that checking in with each other doesn't necessarily equal date night, right? And it doesn't necessarily equal like special, mommy kid time. Like, I don't know if that's the same as check-in. So can we focus on date night first, and then also special family moments? Like, usually I got some advice from one of the parent and me teachers along the way that said, over the course of your week, like, you should have 1 or 2 just special, mommy Annie times, so that she knows that she has your, undivided attention. I'm curious, what does date night first look like in quarantine? And also, what does it look like to have those how do you carve those moments for a one-on-one time? As I said, kind of back to the original question, when you're holding like all of those different roles at the same time. So I know those are two very different questions. Let's do date night first. Date night in quarantine when maybe you just don't want to visit your couch again.
Well, what is so funny about this is I can't tell you how many couples have this conversation with me about like this, the ongoing debate. Sometimes, I'll see a couple, and I'll ask them, okay, did you guys spend any time over the weekend? And the response, more times than not, I'm going to make a general statement here, right?
Yeah,
but at least in my, my clinical lab in the office, this is what happens a lot. It's usually the male that will say, oh yeah, we spent time. We watched a movie together. And then we started watching a series together. We watched the series. Yeah, it was great. And then usually what happens is the wife or the partner, turns and said, I didn't think that we had, like, that was date night. That was like our shared, like, meaningful time. That we didn't have any conversations. So that was not, that was not I didn't feel any more connected to, we didn't have any connecting time.
Yeah.
And so I think that, we have to start from that angle, right? What is connection, right? If within even a relationship or within a family, right? What do the kids, maybe even the siblings, have varied understanding of connection, right? When you sit and you read to me, I feel connected, but maybe for another child, when you run around and you play basketball with me, I feel connected, right? So I think we have to understand at a very basic level, what does it mean for each person in your family or within your relationship to feel connected to you? Right? And when we can understand that, then we can start to apply that.
I can't help but think about, you and I spoke about that, about like the different love languages, and it's true. A different kind of connection is expressed with each person we interact with. But what about ourselves? Like what kinds of questions should we be asking ourselves right now? Because we're talking a lot about and I know I'm moving a little bit away from the relationship, to those that we're in close quarters, but we're also kind of sitting with ourselves a lot right now. And I'm just curious, when you think about a check-in for ourselves, what's kind of a gut check-in that you think we should be doing? I don't know if it's also a couple times a week to make sure that we're doing okay.
Yeah, I think, checking in with yourself is important. I think we have a lot of, I think a lot of people are spending a lot of time on their individual thoughts. I don't know if they're spending a lot of time on their own. But I think being able to understand, like, first of all, just even like your daily functioning pieces, right? How are you sleeping, right? how's your appetite these days? How are you eating? Just checking on a very basic level, like, are you functioning the same as you were weeks ago, or are things markedly different, or are you like just understanding that piece? And then also understanding, okay, how am I using this time, however that time is, right? Whether that means you're working in the home, or you're, parenting, or you're, in this relationship, or whatever it is. How do I like it? Just almost taking inventory, like, how is this time going? Because, there's actually a lot of people that have been expressing, oh, well, this is the time now that I'm going to take up that language. Right? I'm going to learn this language. This is the time that I'm going to get creative and start sewing. This is the time that I'm going to start learning to cook, right? But at the end of the day, and then that either happens or it doesn't happen, and then they put all the pressure on that. It's like, is that what you wanted to do, or did you just put a list that you said you wanted to do it, or like, how does that fit into your life, or does it fit at all?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Does it fit at all?
Yeah.
And it's funny. We automatically compare ourselves to other people, especially through the age of social media. It's not like it's new during quarantine time. we're always checking Instagram or Facebook or our WhatsApps to see, okay, how do I compare, to the next person or to the neighbor or what, whatever it may be. But in quarantine times, I feel like it's even heightened, that comparison. They made sourdough bread. Well, I got to make it today. I got to get on that today, because clearly I'm not winning quarantine time, if I don't do that. And I wrote a piece last week called, it's a marathon, not a sprint, because I think it speaks to what you said about the uncertainty of the unknown, that we're going to be living in this unknown for quite some time. And it's really, really hard to answer ourselves and answer our children with, the phrase, I don't know. I don't know when school is going to start. I don't know when our jobs will look the same. I don't know when our relationship will, sorry, do you want to?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think, in moments like that, I think when the anxiety gets heightened with, I don't know, then it's like, let's go over what we do know.
Let's go over what we do know.
Right. We know that we are here together. Right. We know that, you wake up in the morning and you go to school, right? You have school online, right? You're going to see familiar faces on Zoom or with teachers, or that I'm going to have lunch with you and we're going to have a meal together, and that I don't know, maybe you have a piano lesson, later on in the day, and that we're going to plan to play this board game, on this day. So I think it's also like grounding, oneself or your child or their family, everybody, in what we do know, right? As far as just the day-to-day, and also how, like, our existence, right?
That's right. And, I think about when you say the words inventory, I think about what we do during, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we do a cheshbon hanefesh. We do an inventory of the soul. And, that's usually when we take the time to say, I don't actually want to be, that person next door. And I don't actually want to be, that person on Instagram or Facebook. I'm happy for them. But I want to take a little bit more time getting to know me. And I appreciate your advice about embracing the knowns. And I think that's part of taking an inventory of the soul. What do I really know about myself inside? And what do I like about myself? And for my children, what do they need to know? And how are they going to like themselves better through this process? In stating those, I know this.
Yeah. And I think also our children, to some extent, even whichever age they are, like they know too. They obviously are going through a lot, and even the younger ones, they're feeling stuff, right? It's hard to express, but
Big time.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you want to speak to this or not, but just like, I'm hearing across the board, like kids are sometimes having difficulty, falling asleep, or they're having more nightmares, or, just having, more tantrums during the day, or just all of a sudden something that wasn't an issue all of a sudden is an issue,
It's been fascinating. And what I appreciate that you said at the start is that kind of the anxiety and the stress manifests in each person in a different way, in ourselves, in our partners, in our children, and to kind of wake up realizing that. So if we, one of the questions you and I spoke about is what happens when you look at someone that we've known at least their entire lives, and they look entirely different. They're acting entirely different. So when you ask about, little ones, I've had a child in my bed every night for the last month, every night. Corona. I'm like looking at my other people who it's the same situation, but I have children in my bed that aren't usually in my bed. That's some of them, one of them I'm used to, and now the bed's just not big enough for everyone. The floor is, getting a lot of time there, whereas, kicking kids to the floor. But it's fascinating. And also, the tantrums over things that I had a tantrum today that the iPad ran out of battery the last 15 minutes of class. and that they were going to fail class. And I was like, I promise you are not going to fail Zoom school. You're gonna, you know?
Yeah.
But it's that manifestation of anxiety, and also looking at your kid and saying, you know what, this is who you are right now. This is who you are during this time. And I have to adjust my expectations of you. And also, I hope, kid, you're going to adjust your expectations of me. I think
Yeah.
that's hard because I don't know if they are going to adjust their expectations of me.
Well,
Right?
I love that. I love that piece about, rethinking. Oh, you almost have to, I think for everybody should challenge your own expectations of yourself and of the people in your home, right? Because it's not the same. And so, and maybe you were having, too many expectations to begin with, right? But this especially is the time to not put that extra pressure or the expectations on ourselves and others that we need to be, that we need to do, that we need to see, right?
Right.
And just as you gave that example about, the not having enough batteries in the iPad earlier, I mean, think about how our kids, we talk about how adults are measuring themselves with one another. Well, usually in a classroom, you get to sense, like, if you know what kind of student you are, you don't have to see the grade. Based on how your teacher responds to you, how they, talk with you. You have sometimes more one-on-one engagement. Here, we don't have that.
Right.
So, the measure of how am I doing is if I'm going to be there for class, right? Am I going to be there on Zoom?
That's exactly right. Showing up is like 100% of the battle.
Right. Exactly.
I'm curious, any other communication techniques that we should be kind of attuned to, like ones, kind of the ones that we're used to when we come home from a long day, now that we're with each other all day long, any kind of communication advice you would offer?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to remember that, it's not just what you do in or for your community, but it starts in your home, right? So how you talk to each other, right? How you stop and listen to each other, how you share a story with one another, right? How you acknowledge each other, right? How you make time for each other, right? And just understanding that on a large scale. Because sometimes we think, oh, well, you're family. I can,
That's right.
be however I am. And in some ways, yes, that's true. But we still value our family members, right? We still respect each other. And I think being able to, continue to, those thank yous are so important, right? Because in couples, after a long-term relationship, that's like the first thing to go, right? I don't need to say thank you when you gave me a cup of coffee. I don't need to say thank you for you, whatever, locking the door. But I think those niceties, that I think that they go a long way, and it's very important. And along with that, maybe, again, assess the situation, right? And take in every day, like, what's the situation? What's the mood, right? How are we going to approach each other? Is this a good time to approach each other, right? When should we find time to have maybe a deeper conversation, right? Or maybe there's a debate about something and you want to have that dialogue, but, doing that at 6 p.m. when everyone's racing to cook and make a meal, and you have the kids around, maybe that's not the best time.
Right.
Right. So I think that, in addition with the check-ins, in addition with carving out time for yourself, right? And that might seem strange. Well, there is no time, but there's plenty of people, like, you might say, you know what, I need an hour to go on a walk for the day. When can I have that hour? Right. And to make that time for each other. Sometimes it's also helping each other out with childcare. If you, and maybe it's not even asking. What would happen if you didn't have to ask for help? What if your partner just sort of saw that you were struggling and said, you know what, you need a timeout. Let me take the kids. Right? That would feel pretty good, right?
I feel great.
Yeah.
When you were kind of talking about those thank yous and, that added patience, I couldn't help but think about, like, the initial kind of courtship when you're, dating somebody, or even honestly an initial courtship and a friendship, right? Everything, you know, has that kind of added, I don't want to say you're always in a relationship of respect, but it's thank you for opening the door for me. And like you said, thank you for the coffee, and to our children, oh, you know, thank you for acknowledging my presence when I gave you breakfast this morning. You know?
Right. Yes, exactly.
But in this kind of, like we said, close quarters, maybe we need to like kind of re-see these relationships as brand new relationships, and like in its infancy almost. I don't know what you think about that, but
I love it.
I'm going to play around with that in my own home. Like these are new relationships that I kind of have to foster and nurture. So maybe I just need to be a little bit nicer to see, you know,
Yeah, absolutely. And
how they unfold.
absolutely. And, you know, I think everybody is, I think we said earlier, like everybody's seeing each other in different ways that you're not used to. You know, I was talking to a couple earlier and she was so complimentary of her husband because she said, oh, I'm not used to hearing you on a work call. And, you know, you were so nice when you spoke to them, and, you know, and you were so thoughtful, and like I could feel like she was, you know, I could feel her attraction towards her husband in a way that maybe she hadn't either experienced before or hadn't seen in a while, right?
And I mean, I think that relates to our kids as well. You know, I can't help like every once in a while put my ear to the door, you know, to hear kind of the Zoom conversations, because it's not every day that we get to kind of peek, you know, we get to peek into the classroom and there's an assembly, right? Or, you know, if our child's doing some kind of presentation, that's usually when we're invited. But it's pretty incredible to kind of learn about our kids' interaction in the classroom in a brand new way.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of a special blessing in all of this.
It is, yeah. Well, that's what this is about. It's figuring out, it's understanding that there can be, right? This is almost,
right.
This is an opportunity, right? To deepen the relationships and the connections with each other and at home, and to be able to explore and to be more curious and to be, you know, maybe it also means like at times to be more lighthearted, you know, where since the pressure of us being out and doing has sort of slowed down, maybe that means we can be more at home. Maybe that means we can be a little bit more playful and more engaging in present time.
And I think that word, like you said, present time, to be truly present. I mean, you and I talked about the difference between togetherness and connectedness. You know, we're together all the time right now, but are we actually connected?
Right.
And I think we've spoken about that a little bit through this conversation. I just also want to give those who are here on Zoom, and we can see some of you and see some of your names. Feel free to jump in. If you have any specific questions about how to navigate any of the relationships in your own home, or something that you're personally struggling with during kind of these COVID-19 times, we'd love to hear from you. Or did something resonate with you, you know, that you want to expand on? So any thoughts, anyone? All our people on mute. You can type into the chat, or if you have a question, you can feel free. Any particular thoughts?
I just want to say people can unmute themselves if they have something to
okay.
say. Yeah.
I can't tell. Oh, is that Rebecca?
I have a thought actually. It's okay. I'm like,
why don't you start us off, and then maybe someone else will feel more comfortable.
So on the topic of like Rabbi Guzik, when you said like they're making sourdough, like I need to jump in and make the sourdough and all of that. You know, I am feeling, I guess with social media, you know, like I'm scrolling on it throughout the day and I see people, I don't know, like doing things with their kids. And like, I know everyone's family is different, but it's all these like hashtag making memories and like all, you know, these, you know, things that I'm seeing like going on WhatsApp groups of like, what your kids are going to say in the future to their grandkids. And like, what I remember is my mommy doing puzzles with me and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not, am I supposed to be making memories now? Like, I'm just trying to survive.
A hashtag survive the day. Yeah.
Right. But I feel like I don't know what to do with that. I do feel kind of pressure because this is an opportunity. Like, I do see it as a gift in a way,
Right.
you know, what do I do with all of this?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, Rebecca, you're right on. I think it's you and everybody, right? It's sort of like, I think you're probably finding there are moments that are really nice and pleasant, right? And when that's happening, that's great. And maybe those are the moments to highlight those things. But at the same time, you're right, this may feel very much like survival mode for many people, right? For many of us. And so, and especially, you know, if you're working and you have multiple kids and they're being, you know, on Zoom, and you might have to help them with school, and then you have to cook, and then your husband wants this, and that's a lot. And so I think that, well, you know, I think in general, like we know that social media, that is not real information. That is not real life. And so you're getting glimpses of things. But I think, well, I want everyone to remind themselves that, you know, that's not there's no perfect here. There's no perfect scenario at all. And, you know, I mean, someone was saying the other day, oh, your kids are so sweet, and oh, they're so nice. I said, yeah, they are, but nobody's perfect. Like, we're all having our tantrums at any given moment, like, and that's okay. Right.
Right. And Maury just wrote, social media is people's posts of the good stuff. And she's absolutely correct. And like, we have to remember that.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I love when people post like the real moments. I love it. I love when people post the real moments. I mean, it just, that's when I feel kind of most connected to the world.
Yeah. I think we all do.
Right?
Right?
I think my real
we want to
moments
see
are
real.
real.
We want to know what real looks like.
Yeah, Maury, I want to post. I think we just don't have the phone as readily available during, you know, during the insanity.
Actually, sometimes I try to capture it when it's like really bad, but they get so angry because they know I post on social media, so they start hitting me, and then they insist that I delete it because God forbid someone might actually see them in how they act with me.
We're all with you, all of you. We're all going through the same thing, where we're just going like day by day, moment by moment. I try not to look at the big picture. I try to look at my day, because you know, the big picture is like that nighttime when I swivel. We're all going through it, you know, single mom, trying to do the best. I'm working full time. I feel like I am literally losing it some days. So I'm trying to do the best. I try to like split up my day a little bit and give them as much love as possible. Because I feel that all the kids, as much as they're getting so used to having us right there, that they need us more. Like, my child's more needy of me now that I'm 24/7 home than ever before.
And Mona, that's why I use the word best friend, you know, because for how many years have we been told by, you know, every scholar, you know, you shouldn't be your kid's best friend. And right
You
now,
don't have a choice right now.
Yeah, right now, I feel like my little guy needs a best friend. He's missing his best friend, Rona.
You know what? Whenever we're on Zoom, he's looking for Henry. But you know what?
It's
we're
a really
all guilty. We all have this guilt that we all feel like we're not doing enough, or we're not. You know what? We're all just trying to survive day by day. Be light on yourself. I look at Rebecca. She looks like she's about to cry. No, you're doing a great job. Everything is fine.
No, this is like misery loves company. It's the best.
I think, you know, it's a good reminder that everybody's doing their best, and everyone is being good enough, right? You're doing your part good enough, right? However you do it. And I know that, you know, it's unfortunate, especially women, especially moms, carry a lot of guilt, right? If you're not feeling guilty about one thing, it's about another thing, right? And so I think, you know, we have to quiet or find ways to quiet that voice, because that's just not helpful, right? It's not helpful, and it's not fair to you, right? So sometimes it's reframing or changing the narrative, right? Of like, what's happening right here in the moment. Because I'm sure if you went back in the day and you wrote out every little thing you did, right? You would realize, you'd be like, wow, I did all those things. Wow, that's amazing, right? And so that's what you need to start and end the day with knowing how much you do and how much, love you're putting out there for your family.
And I think that goes back to like the inventory that you were saying. You know, we take a lot of time to check in with others. I know we're a lot of us are taking the time to, to call others and to see how they are. But to take a few moments every day and to not see it as selfish, to check in to see how we're doing.
All around, I have to tell you something. We're all so fortunate. We're all so lucky. We all have food. We all have roofs. We all have a community. I mean, I have some tenants who are struggling that they don't even have money for food. So when you look at like what we should all look at, see what we're grateful for. And whenever I find myself feeling sorry for myself, I kind of just do like one of these like wake up calls to myself saying like, we're so lucky and we're all here for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of that inventory probably is like, understanding, counting your blessings in a way that's more on a simple level, right? On a basic level of what do we have, right? If we look at, I don't know if you guys know Abraham Maslow, but his hierarchy of needs, right? Like at the very basic level, what do we have, right? Do we have food? Do we have shelter? Do we have a place to rest our heads at night? Do we have human connection? Do we have those basic things, right? And after that, everything else is just those are the extras, right?
I agree. And I think the way, I gave this advice to a group of, I see Theodore walk. I think I gave this advice to a group of parents in the parenting center. We talked about rituals and what kinds of rituals help ground children. And even through that advice, I kept realizing the same rituals that we offer children are the same rituals. It's okay. The same rituals that I think ground ourselves. So, lately I've been trying, they think I'm annoying, but, I'll try to sing Modeh Ani, with my kids in the morning. And then, I try really hard every night to sing Shema with them at bedtime. And mostly it's just so there's a frame of the day. So it's not letting I want that to be like the first thing they hear and the last thing they hear before they go to sleep. So it as much as it's for them, it's for me. It's for me too, to feel like, okay, we started in a really kind of safe and rooted kind of realm of gratitude, and we're ending in a safe and rooted realm of gratitude. Does that make sense?
I love that. Knowing what is grounding, what provides that, right? And
that's it. What's grounding? Yeah. And I think asking that of each member of our family, like what's grounding for them? What do I
feel safe?
What makes you feel safe? I like that. What makes us feel safe?
For him, it'll be the iPad, but
That's I don't know. Okay, can I put you on the spot there, Dr. Letter, about
what's too much?
Well, yeah, I'm curious, like, in this time in which, look, 6-7 weeks ago, I think a lot of us on this call would say, iPad and TV and all of that, the limits looked really, really different. Do we forgive ourselves over these 7 weeks? Do we, what are your thoughts about that?
I think we absolutely have to forgive ourselves, right? I think it's one of those things where it's knowing when to use it, right? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have any boundaries around it at all, right? Because, I don't know about your child, but if my child is watching hours of whatever they're watching, they get headaches, right? And they don't feel so good. And so I think having some boundaries are certainly important, but it's not going to be at the same level. I think that's part of like giving ourselves a break and giving them a break, right? Because again, I think for a lot of kids, they're also feeling they're feeling awkward, uncomfortable, you know, they're feeling lonely, they are not socializing in ways that they're used to, you know, and so I think we have to understand the times and the environment in which we're in, and kind of let it slide when need be.
No, and I appreciate you even kind of recognizing that loneliness. You know, even those people who are in a home together can still experience loneliness. And I know we have people on the call who are by themselves, you know, living alone, and, you know, are trying to navigate the relationships in their lives in an entirely new way, in the sense that they can't have those people that they love right next to them. So I just wanted to be, you know, cognizant and aware that there are all different kinds of kind of family units that are on this call and in this room.
Right.
And that we're all kind of navigating our relationships in different ways.
Absolutely. There are many different constructs, and understanding, you know, for any home, however that looks, or however that configuration looks, is like, you know, having that inventory, checking in with yourself, checking in with the people who are at home with you, you know, and sometimes that also means, you know, as much as you do for others, it's also, this is more than appropriate time to also ask, right? To talk to your friends, talk to your community, ask for support, or ask, well, oh, when are you available to talk? Or do you have some time to talk? Or do you, right? Like, these are the times that we want to be able to connect and lean on each other.
I think that piece, realizing that it's the time to ask. You know, all those times that I can probably name half the people on this call, in this group, who have said, you know, other people need it. You know, I don't want to take up that person's time. You know, it's other people need it more than I do. But I like that you're giving all of us permission to say, no, now's the time to ask. You know, if you need the time to connect with somebody, ask. I have a group of girlfriends I went to UCLA with, and we usually see each other, you know, once or twice a year. You know, that's just kind of how we're somewhere across the country, and we just don't see each other that often. And the other night, I just thought, I have to ask. So, you know, we attempted a Zoom call, and it kind of, you know, we did the best we could. But I felt like, you know what? No, I have to ask. I need to hear them. And if it's, we know the phrase, if not now, when. So we have to be okay with being I hate using the word selfish. It's not selfish, right?
No, it's not at all. And
Right.
you know what's interesting too, you know, is that we live in a time where people don't talk on the phone. They're not used to it, and everybody's constantly, chatting. And the other day, actually, I called a friend, and she picked up and she said, "Oh, wow, thank you so much for calling me. Nobody calls me. Everybody's only just, you know, chatting." And so I thought, oh, okay, this is, you know, we need to be calling each other more. We need to be talking to each other.
And I'm just going to give a plug for something next week. I hate to use this time for it, but I think a lot of people on this call will enjoy it. Next Thursday, I think, right, Rebecca? Next Thursday, but at 7:30? I don't know if we chose a time. I think 7:30. She's going to check for me and see.
7:30.
7:30.
And it'll be in our weekly schedule that we send out. So read through it.
So you don't have to think about it now, but just to put it out there, because I think it'll be really fun. Cantor Keith Miller, who is one of the B'nai Mitzvah tutors, and he works with our children on Divrei Torah here at Sinai Temple. He's also known as Decanter, and he teaches and sells Israeli wines. And so we're going to do a virtual, does that sound fun? A virtual wine tasting with whatever wines you have in your home. He's going to teach a little bit about his own Israeli wines and present. But we thought it might be, I think we're calling it Unwind with Rabbi Guzik. And I chose this event because I thought I need to unwind a little bit. So, thank you. Fantastic. I see it in the chat, so you can see the information. But it's going to be super informal. Bring your cheese, bring your wine, and we'll all kind of, you know, share a l'chaim together. But I think, to your point, Dr. Letter, you know, we need to let ourselves have some of those me moments. And it's not selfish. It's self-care.
Exactly.
Any other final questions before we wrap up? Any other thoughts? Any other final thoughts from you, Dr. Litter?
I mean, I'm really happy that we can have this conversation. And I think, you know, the word you mentioned earlier is permission. I think permission is so key. It's so important right now, giving yourself permission, right? Giving yourself permission to be more in the moment, giving yourself permission to have more of your own time, giving yourself permission for more self-care, giving yourself permission to also to be frustrated or agitated, right? You're allowed, right? Giving yourself permission to ask for help, right? Giving yourself permission, I think that is really, really important. And just, you know, for you and your family, along with the continuation of trying to understand what it means to be grounded in your home, what it means for everybody to feel safe and comfortable and secure. Those things may also very well shift and change, right? Because, you know, the longer that we are in this space of social distancing, you know, like there are going to be moments that might get harder and easier. So, you know, as grief happens, grief takes on many different forms, and it comes in different waves and it shows up differently. And so I think just in the same way, you may be having a really good day with your family at home, and you might feel like, oh yes, we're on a roll. And then the very next day, it might really suck. Yeah. And you might really need a break. And that is to be expected, and that is normal and healthy.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I just want to remind everyone to continue to take those inventories, you know, pretend that High Holy Days have come super, super early. And, you know, you usually take that month of Elul to do that Cheshbon HaNefesh, you know, that inventory of your soul. I give you permission, a lot of leeway to pretend that time has come right now, and forgive yourself. You know, let yourself off the hook a little bit. Not a little bit, let yourself off the hook a lot. Because as we've all kind of said, we're in it together. And a lot of us are experiencing the same emotions at different times, and they're manifesting in different ways. So if you'll help me give a virtual round of applause to Dr. Litter. Thank you so much.
Thank you to you guys.
You're the very, very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I know as we move forward in the following weeks, I'm sure we'll have you know, videos or suggestions from Dr. Litter, and I would just want to make myself available and the clergy available. If any of these, you know, pieces of conversation resonated with you and you want to speak further about it, you know, we're more than happy to take that time, have a phone call, a real phone call, and connect that way. So thank you, everyone. This is really special, and I just appreciate you taking your own time to join us in this conversation. So we'll see you all soon.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.